Welcome back to HM and Big E Review Things. Today we have a double feature, another double feature where we've each seen one of the movies and we're going to talk to each other about it. We last did this in our trash can episode. You can click above to view that episode here. Today is definitely not trash can day, or
it's not trash can.
It's not trash can day, and so we're just talking two movies, and the two movies we're talking about is I'll be talking about Lawrence of Arabia. And you will be talking about
The Count of Monte Cristo.
The Count of Monte Cristo in a very questionable accent. So it's a double feature, and we're talking about kind of these throwback older films. You want to start us off? Count of Monte Cristo. What is it about, and what do you think about the movie?
Well, it's based on a very old book, and it's basically a good old epic revenge tale. It's about a man... Dumas, and it takes place in Marseille, France, and he's an upcoming sailor, and his best friend is one of his mates. But long story short, he betrays him because he's jealous. So there's this whole conspiracy to get rid of this guy. All different people have different reasons on to get rid of this nice guy. He's played by Jim Caviezel, who was Jesus in The Passion of the Christ. And this guy is thrown into prison.
Right. So you're talking about the Monte Cristo that was remade and came out in
2000
something,
2002 maybe.
Yeah. But there was an original movie back from
1940 or something.
Yeah, I'm going to guess the 30s or the 40s,
which is black and
based
white.
on the book. And so, but you're talking about that.
I'm talking the modern one, and I watched this, I believe, in theaters back in the day. It was really in the time when Gladiator came out. These kind of historic epics came out. So people were really kind of digging this type of movie. So, this, I don't know if we should, spoiler alert, this guy gets thrown into prison. And
again, it's like a 100-year-old book. I don't know if we need spoiler alerts for... Okay.
He's thrown into prison, and he learns skills in prison. Okay. The main thing he learns is from an older gentleman played by the same guy who plays Dumbledore, the first Dumbledore.
Okay, Richard...
You're terrible Harry Potter.
You don't remember either.
I'm not a Harry Potter fan.
Okay.
Okay, he's in Gladiator as well.
Yes.
Okay.
Terrible. That doesn't help me with the name. Okay.
Okay, but he learns skills from this man.
Yes.
And including the major thing is he finds a treasure.
Okay.
After he escapes the prison, he finds a treasure. He becomes unimaginably wealthy, and he exacts revenge on these people that ruined his life.
Right.
So that's the movie.
And and I think it's supposed it is heralded essentially, or basically known as the best revenge tale.
Yeah.
Because I guess his revenge is very elaborate, or it's very.
That's right. He exposes their weaknesses and he uses his wealth to lure them in. And
I see.
Because they're all about wealth and greed and all that kind of stuff.
I see.
And he kind of wins at the end of the day.
Excellent.
But he's also. Yeah, it's kind of weird because you're rooting for this guy because he's trying to get revenge. But the stuff he does, he kind of, throws them to prison, and he doesn't kill them, but he throws them to prison. It's a good story.
So he doesn't subscribe to the best revenge is a life well lived.
No,
not so much. He is exacting revenge on everyone who wronged him.
Yes, but then he lives a great life because he's super, super rich.
And and the name Count of Monte Cristo is just to explain because I don't know either. That's the name or the alias that he takes up when he comes out, right?
Yes, because the treasure's hidden on Monte Cristo.
I see.
He finds it buried there. He grabs it. Becomes super wealthy, buys everything, and he introduces.
Why didn't the old man take the treasure?
Because he dies.
Oh, okay. But he knew about the treasure, but he didn't.
He was imprisoned because he didn't want to give up the treasure.
Okay.
So they're trying to dig a hole to escape.
I see.
He gets buried. He dies. He dies, and then the whole story is that. This other guy escapes instead, but he knows where the treasure is.
I see. Okay.
It's a good movie. It's well acted. Again, it was when Hollywood was kind of obsessed with these period dramas, and all around a good movie.
Yeah.
It's not the best movie of all time, but I remember what I liked about the movie was actually probably the first half, when you really feel his pain in the prison. They really filmed it really well, where it's like you feel that the years pass by. He gets whipped on the anniversary of his imprisonment every year. He gets whipped just as a reminder.
How long was he in prison for?
Well, I think total, he's in 13 years in prison.
Okay.
And it's literally, there's no, in those days, there's like, there's no bathrooms, there's no, you can't walk outside and enjoy some sunlight. He has a little window he looks at. Sure. He goes insane. And there's this, he explains to the old man when he comes into his cell and they meet, and he's like, there are 2,519 rocks or something like that. Mm-hmm. And then the man's like, yeah, I know you've counted them, but have you named them yet? Mm-hmm. And then he just breaks down, and you really feel his pain. So I think it sets up really well for the revenge. Okay. And I think that's
important.
Yeah, sometimes the magic of these movies is sort of telling that story in an unrushed manner.
Yeah.
So, Jim Caviezel does a great job, and there's other good actors in this movie, too.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, what's your final grade on Count of Monte Cristo?
I'd give it a B+.
B+, okay. And then we'll do something at the end where I'm going to ask you at the end whether you would recommend me to watch it, knowing what I like. And because I'll do the same for you. Yeah. So the movie I'll talk about that, if you have questions you can ask, is Lawrence of Arabia from 1960-something. We also just reviewed Ben-Hur. And so click up top to see that review. This is another period epic. This came out after Ben-Hur. It stars
Peter O'Toole.
Peter O'Toole, thank you, that's his name. And it is truly an epic. This movie I really enjoyed more than Ben-Hur. I feel that it's a deeper character study, and it really zeroes in on this. I think when he's starting, he's a lieutenant or a lieutenant in the British Army, and it's during World War I, and he is sent essentially because he's not useful. He is sent to Cairo, and he's sent to the Arabian Peninsula and to deal with at the time, they weren't even collectively known as the Arabs, but he understands their culture. There's a lot of movies that have done this, since. He understands their culture, he befriends them, and he kind of leads them. He leads them to victory, to unity, but I like that this doesn't it doesn't actually even fall into tropes. I mean, this was before, I guess, a lot of these movie tropes were established, but there isn't that kind of grand victory really at the end, and it's a really deep character study where it's not just he triumphs and he's cheered and that kind of ends that way. It actually ends the character arc is really complex, and it takes it to unexpected places that I thought was really interesting. That's my overall thoughts on the movie. And I'll get into a little bit of spoilers here, as much as I can spoil a 60-year-old movie.
How long is this movie?
This is another, I think it's 3.5 hours.
Yeah, what is up with these long movies?
There is also an intermission.
Okay.
I think the musical score is really good in this movie, and actually, if you watch the movie, you'll probably recognize the score. It's just something that's, I guess, in our musical vocabulary without really knowing where it's from. But it's great score. I don't know. I feel so. I don't want to give too much away because you haven't seen it either, and actually we'll talk about that. But he develops as a character, and it's a standard. Oh, I don't really fit in here with kind of in the British normal army and with the other officers. Then he goes and he seems kind of very different in the way that he's treating these other people, who even they acknowledge that the British see them as barbaric and that kind of stuff. And he treats them differently, and he treats them kind of more humanely, more understanding, and he treats them, and he understands, where their strengths are. And there's one scene in particular which stands out that, they're crossing, what is known as an uncrossable desert. And I have to mention this because we talked about this before in one of the trash can one, where they film all this stuff really outside, and they're crossing an actual desert, and you can see it, and it's crazy, and all the sandstorm and the dust is all kicking up everywhere. Anyway, the memorable scene is at the end of that, one of his members in his caravan that's crossing this uncrossable desert, right when they reach the end, they just see his camel. And the guy is he's fallen off in the nighttime and he's dead. But he goes back to rescue him. This is pretty standard, trope now. He goes back and he rescues him.
Oh, I thought he'd leave him.
No, he rescues him. But again, I'm going to give this part away because it's a spoiler. But almost in the scene afterwards, when he's trying to negotiate a peace between two people, a crime is committed, and the person that's one tribe kills another. And the other tribe was going to kill that person who perpetrated the crime, which would break the alliance, and it would destroy the entire point of them crossing the desert to try to rally these people. and then they find out the person who perpetrated the crime was the guy he rescued.
Oh.
And Lawrence he volunteers to execute this person to not break so I think stuff like that is really, really clever. I think it's really good writing for that emotional. And so there's a few examples like that. I really enjoyed this movie. It was slow to start. At the beginning, I was really not that interested, and it took me a little bit to draw me in. But once it did, I was pretty captivated towards the end.
I mean, and that's one of the things that I find about these older movies. They take their time.
Yes.
It's so, today's movies are just so, it's fast editing, fast cutting, there's all this like cram stuff in. And sometimes watching these old movies kind of makes you appreciate the art of writing and filmmaking in a different level. And
because modern movies are now written so that they have to be within a certain runtime so that they can fit that many showings per night. Because if it's too long, you can't have that many showings, and it's just not worth the money for them to get back. And so it's a bit more money driven that way. But back then, yeah, I guess it was less of a concern.
I've heard of this movie, but I've never gone to watch it. So was there anything you didn't like about this movie?
I think there was some, as a product of its time as well, there's probably some cultural insensitivities that were probably touched on. It didn't stand out too much to me. I think there was a lot of good acting. Alec Guinness is in it. Obi-Wan. He's very good. I forget a lot of the other actors' names. Again, I would say these are not household names, even though I think they all did a fairly good job. I don't know. I don't know if there's actually much for me to criticize about the movie other than its length. But it doesn't even feel particularly long. Again, I think it has the same problem to a much smaller degree of Ben-Hur, where the movie kind of ends and then there is a rather long epilogue. The epilogue still kind of deals with his, like the main character Lawrence, and how it really deals. And again, it's surprising that they go through this because at the end it really kind of deals with his emotional baggage and the emotional result of what he's done and that kind of stuff. And
these older movies, maybe I'm wrong, but they kind of were probably major experiences for people in those days.
I think
there was less sort of different types of entertainment like today with the internet.
Well, and I think as well, we have to remember, air travel back then was less of a thing. People were like people couldn't go to Egypt, and they filmed most of it. I don't think they filmed it in not Egypt. Sorry, I'm thinking about the other movie, Death on the Nile. They couldn't go to the Middle East countries and visit these vast deserts and stuff, and they filmed this on location in Jordan and in different parts of Africa. And
it was an experience for people to go watch this stuff, right?
For sure.
And that's why the movie's probably a certain length, and it sort of takes its time because people are paying good money. They want to really watch something, and with an intermission, it's a big deal. One thing that I kind of thought, and this sort of a side comment, is when I watched Ben-Hur and I'm assuming Lawrence Arabia, just 10 years after came Star Wars.
Yeah.
Which was think of that kind of jump, right? From some of the techniques you saw to Star Wars, which was industrial light and magic.
Yes.
And, how, it kind of makes you appreciate how genre defining and how grand that movie was when it came out at the time. Like we watched, maybe, if you're watching and you watched the 1977 Star Wars, you're like, what's a big deal? But look at the the music for John Williams, and I know we're doing a Star Wars review, but even the graphics and the cutting edge stuff that they did, and maybe even shortening the length time because Star Wars is not 3-4 hours. I think stuff like that is really, you see the history of movies really.
Actually, I remember being blown away probably 10-15 years ago when I learned that in Return of the Jedi, in that opening scene of Return of the Jedi when the Emperor arrives on the Death Star, I was always amazed watching that movie. Like, oh my goodness, how many stormtrooper extras did they have to get? How big was this set that they built? But it actually turns out it was just a really beautiful matte painting. And that's a skill that's lost again.
It's lost, but Lawrence Arabia and Ben-Hur used some of that.
There was some of that.
100%.
Some of the wide shots.
They did have a lot of extras.
Yes.
So some of that technique is lost because now you just CGI everything. Be done with it. Right.
And so some of those old techniques are really good to watch and to appreciate and to marvel at some of it. And to your point, when Star Wars came out, you can see how the reason why it captivated kind of the entire world, just that jump in effects in filmmaking and everything was so different and so magical in terms of that escaping into a different world completely.
And then it's from Star Wars on. The Spielberg era, Lucas era, the 80s, early 90s had like a incredible run in terms of movies and originality and effects, right? I think the 60s and 50s they were going it's color and epics. And, but the storytelling would have been a little bit long, and then it jumped hugely in the late 70s, 80s, right? So then you got Back to the Future, you got Terminator, you got all these movies Jurassic Park, right, in the early 90s. Just massive jumps in...
All three of those movies and Star Wars, John Williams.
John Williams.
He was the king of the 80s and 90s, man.
Yeah, he's still great. He's like he's in his 90s now, and I think he's still making some music.
Okay, so that was Lawrence of Arabia, another thing. My final grade for Lawrence of Arabia is an A-.
Wow, that's really high.
It actually is a very good movie. I liked it way better than Ben-Hur. It's not even comparable. Ben-Hur had the one good scene. I thought this had mostly good scenes. It was a very enjoyable movie. It told a very interesting story, a character story, and it takes its time for you to really feel his emotions, to go on the journey with him.
I mean, really if you're saying A- now, imagine you watched it in theater. You'd be A+, right?
I easily, if I had watched it back then. Again, I think not being able to travel, not being able to see pictures of the desert easily by just taking out a little magic brick from your phone and seeing, I want to see a desert. And you'd have to imagine that. Most people wouldn't have seen Middle Eastern people.
Yeah, that's right.
And so I think, at the time it would have been mind-blowing to see a movie like this. So A-. So we'll end the segment with this. Would you recommend me, based on what you know of my movie taste and what you thought of the movie, would you recommend me to watch that remake, the 2000s remake of Count of Monte Cristo?
Yes, I would. But I would predict that you see some of this as a little bit trope, cheesy. Yeah. But again, remember, it's based on a 1920s whatever book. They're going beat by beat with the book.
Right.
It's hard to get away
Actually, so the interesting question that maybe I should have asked when we were talking about that is, we just reviewed Death on the Nile, which was also based on a very old book. Any parallels there, or anything that you think one did better in terms of adapting very old material?
I think...
Because that was one of our criticisms about Death on the Nile, that because it was based on a very old book and modern mysteries have kind of evolved a little bit since then, would you say modern revenge tales have kind of evolved and kind of grown a bit more, and this is kind of a product more of its time, or do you think it's aged really
It's a good question. I think for this movie, because you felt the grit of it. I don't think there's a lot of CGI in it. You felt like you were in that time frame. He's dirty. He's messy.
Right.
You almost kind of suspend your modern take on stuff. But nothing now, because it looks super clean. There's CGI everywhere. I don't know. I just kind of feel like it was less believable. So then automatically I'm sort of watching it with modern lenses. That's kind of maybe a weird point, but I think this one does a better job of adapting the material.
Okay.
The acting's better.
Okay.
The sets are better. Everything about this movie would be better than Death on the Nile. You would watch it, and I think you'll like it. Again, you might have to...
So that's what we'll do. So you recommend me watch it, so I will watch it. What will you predict my grade is? And I'll put it in the description after I watch it and whether it matches. What do you think I'll give it a grade?
I think you're going to give it a B-.
Okay, B-. All right. Well, so we'll check back on the description in maybe a week or so and see if I've updated it to see if I watched it and give that grade. I, on the other hand, as well, talking about Lawrence of Arabia, definitely recommend that you watch Lawrence of Arabia. Especially after having seen Ben-Hur, I think you will enjoy this movie even more. I think you'll appreciate it even more because it's set in the same, it was filmed around the same time, but I think this does a better character study. I think you enjoy, you appreciate that a lot more. I think you will also give it an A-.
Okay, that's fair. I mean, because Ben-Hur I gave it a B+. So
that's true, actually.
Again, because of the product of its time.
If you're giving product of its time, I'm going to say you might even give it an A.
Okay.
Let's see. Okay, so let us know if you have seen Lawrence of Arabia or Count of Monte Cristo, either versions. Let us know what you think. Let us know what you think about what we think. Until next time, keep watching things.
And like and subscribe to our channel.
Thank you.